Welcome everybody to our November 7th Parent Leadership Team meeting. Very excited to have y'all here. If we could all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay. So we have a lot going on this meeting. We have our badges taking place in the back. We are going to get some clarification and understanding, and there's a little bit of celebration going on too, as you can see with the festive mood. We are very, very excited for the future of Brevard schools. I will try not to cry, get that emotional over it. It feels very good to feel valued and supported, and we're ready to move on from here. So we're celebrating and getting clarification today. With that, if you'll take a look at your agenda. You have your agenda. It has a little bit of information. One of the things I still am having some issues with is I feel like some people are not getting emails, and those emails are important because I send some good stuff out with those and things that you may need to know for the next meeting. So if you do not get the email on your way out, make sure you put a big star next to your name, and that way I can double check and make sure that it's not an error in how I've typed it in, or if it's just that you're new and I haven't got you in there yet. So that's an easy way for me to check. Your second handout is some information about a neat little contest, a video contest. It's due November 17th, so take a look at that. It would be great to have some representation from Brevard. Our next two handouts have to do with the volunteers, so we will get into those in just a little bit. And your last one is some information that's great to share out with families at the school. Make sure that one gets in your notebook. It has to do with insurance. Wanted to point out that in the back, our guest this week is Hidden Potentials. This is a nonprofit which is out there to get students, work with them on their grades, their test scores, and just developing a real enjoyment for learning. They have been in Brevard for 16 years. They offer services such as tutoring, after-school programs, and of course exam prep for SAT and ACT, and special help for all students, whether it's general ed or special education. So again, their name is Hidden Potentials. Please feel free to stop by afterwards and see them. Thank you. Okay, to kick it off, I have Miss Michelle Irwin to talk to you today.
Well, good morning. I'm not going to steal Dr. Bingley's thunder, but I got to say thank you so much for all you did over the last several months to get the word out. That's just my heartfelt thank you to you. We could not have accomplished what we accomplished this week without every single one of you getting involved and sharing the information out there. So I know he's going to share some more, but I just had to personally say thank you for all your hard work and efforts. So we're moving on to the next thing. We're not going to stay idle. We're going to keep working towards the initiatives that matter to you, our parents, and our community members. So today I'm here to share with you some things about our legislative platform. How many of you have heard some of the information that's kind of going out there about high stakes testing and how that's a lot of people, right? And there's a lot of concern about that. You may have heard some things about the opt-out of testing. Have you heard about that? I know some of you have shared with me individually. There are people that are talking about opting out. Lee County, their board members actually voted to opt out and then changed their minds and came back because they realized that there were a lot of ramifications that would go with opting out of the testing that they weren't prepared yet to deal with because nobody really knows what the impact could be. So what we've been doing, our board and Dr. Bingley have been doing is working on a legislative platform, and we've made a decision that we were going to strategically approach this. It can't be just a one-time thing, and that we need to listen to our community as well as get you involved in this process. And so we've developed a legislative platform that addresses two main issues. And I'm going to take you to some of this and share with that. And Dr. Bingley may run up here because he may want to say something too on this. But I'm going to share with you what we're doing and also share with you how you can get involved to support us. So we have two main issues, and I'm going to pull it up here as soon as it comes through. Right over here, and I have a website up. There are two ways that you can access this information, but the quickest one is right here. And if we click on here, it's going to take us to our legislative page. And here are the two main issues that we're addressing. The first is to revise legislation to create a thoughtful, quality, and sustainable assessment accountability system in Florida. So we believe in assessment. Assessment's been around forever. It's not something new. What we're talking about is the high stakes that are placed on one test for students and how it can impact students and staff members, teachers, negatively. Actually, all staff, because it impacts principals and anybody in the that have an educational role in a child's learning. So I'll take you to it. We have a more detailed. These are just the two primary areas. And though you guys all got out there and we were able to be successful in passing the half-penny sales tax, one of the reasons why we even had to do that was because we don't have a sustained funding model from Tallahassee. And so we really needed to address that. There are a lot of critical needs that we have, and our community came together and said, we're going to take care of it ourselves for right now, but we also realized that, you know, we can't always go that route. We need to really work with our legislators to get a very sustained funding model. So if you go to right here, is our full platform. It'll take a second because this is a PDF, big PDF file. And in here we give some highlights of what we would like to see accomplished. In just a second. This computer system's slightly slower than the others. And why I'm showing this to you is because we would love for you to be able to look at it yourselves, but also to share it with your schools. You represent your schools, share that, invite us in to share some of this with them. So right here we have to revise the legislation to create a thoughtful, quality, and sustainable assessment and accountability system in Florida. Here's the problem. We've had multiple years of changes in our state testing, and we can't even get our hands around it. Oh, what other ones? Oh, okay. Oh, thanks, Diana. So we have, we've had, that has been a problem. The current legislation path is not supported by thoughtful or analysis of the assessment outcomes. So you can read this. I'm not going to read it verbatim to you. You can pull it up to read it in detail. But the first thing is we're asking that they look at making the first year of administrating the new state assessment a field test year, so that we could get the data that we need in order to move forward with this, with the assessment program. We're also, hold on. There we go. While measured student performance should be a component, we believe in that. We do believe that there is some value in test results. We just don't think it's the only thing, and why is that doing that, that we should be measuring students on. Yes, ma'am. No, it has. No, this is not going to be a field test year. No, we're going full forward. Okay. We need people to talk to the mic, just so we can get it on recording because people are watching it. Thank you. And the reason why we ask you to go to the mic is because we do broadcast this, so we want people to hear what the questions are when they read it.
Okay. My question was, I'm a little bit surprised that it hasn't already been determined that it's a field test year, because my teachers and my kids' schools have informed my kids, or at least they've informed me, that their teachers told them that the test scores aren't going to count this year because this is the first year. So I'm under the impression that the teachers are letting the students know that it is a field test year. So that's something you might want to look into. I don't know if the teachers are miscommunicating to the students, or if they really believe that they're not going to count this year. Just a question, a concern out there.
Thank you. That's something we will definitely pursue to make sure we clarify that information. The other thing is to allow local school boards to determine the placement, retention, remediation, and grading decisions for students. So what happens is there's some triggers in the law that basically state if a student doesn't perform at a certain level in like 3rd grade, they could be automatically retained. Or if a student doesn't do well on a test at any other level, they could be forced into forced remediation courses. So why, at first you might think, well, what's wrong with remediation? It's just extra support. Those decisions are being made on this one test. It could be the student had a bad day, didn't understand something as clearly. So we want to work with our legislatures to look at multi-metric approaches to determining how students are performing in schools. The second key component we're talking about, again, is creating a sustainable and adequate source of funding for public schools. We need to establish a dedicated funding source for PICO to assist K-12 school district. PICO money is the money that we get from the state for capital projects. It kind of almost disappeared, right, Dr. Bingley? And it disappeared, and then it's come back a little bit, but it's very unstable. We just don't know what we're going to get from year to year in that PICO funding. Reevaluate the FTE shift towards virtual providers and dual enrollment tuition. And what happened there was our virtual school, so let's say we educate a student for 7 hours a day, correct? If you're in high school. And the student chooses to take 2 virtual classes above and beyond their full day. We have to pay, or the money is taken away from us to pay to the virtual school. Instead of them getting paid on top of that, it's coming out of our full FTE that we get. So we get less per hour of instruction that we provide to students. And it's hard for us to plan for that because we may not even know how many kids are taking. They can sign up for virtual school, on their own, and they have to pass before the funding takes place. So previously they used to be funded on their own. They would submit their own FTE and they got paid for their FTE, and it didn't count against the school, so we didn't have to share that FTE. The other part comes with dual enrollment. We're required by law to provide dual enrollment. We can't say we're not going to do dual enrollment anymore. Can't. The law will not allow us to do that. And besides, we do believe it's good for kids. But what happened is there was a shift from our sending our students for dual enrollment classes to it's pretty much Eastern Florida State College. And we didn't pay anything because they were being paid through their own state funding to accommodate our students. That shifted. The legislature said, now we have to pay the tuition for those students. And that cost us how much, Dr. Bingley? Or the estimated cost could be around $5 million-ish?
Well, it would have been if we did dramatically pare down the number of dual enrollment courses that our kids could take while still maintaining the path to the AA degrees, which really are the important part of that. The other part, Michelle, I'll say, going back to virtual education, the state also requires that students take at least one
virtual class.
So by design, that money is being shifted
over to virtual education. So that's another part of it, that the funding really was automatically required to be shifted away.
The other thing is to develop a capital supplement to districts that are well below the average. Dr. Bingley, stand up and you explain this one because you do it so well.
Which one is this?
The supplement for federal lands.
Yeah, we actually ran this through the Senate last time and it passed, but it did not get through the House. There are some districts, Brevard being one of them, that are dramatically and financially negatively affected by their amount of federal land, particularly supporting military efforts. And what you find is that those counties are well below the state average in assessed property value per student. We are 23% below the state assessed property value. So we kind of built a coalition of some counties that were in that same boat and used the same logic. I don't know if you know, small school districts in Florida get something called a sparsity supplement because they're too small to generate the kind of assessed property value per student. Well, it's the same logic, only it also then affects the families and kids in military, because by design, they are automatically in districts that get underfunded because that federal land takes all that off the tax roll. We're going to bring that through again, and we believe it has a decent chance. So that's what
Right.
that is.
So-
We put a thoughtful approach to it together, have the data. Some of the roadblocks from 2012 are no longer in the way, and I'll leave it at that. So we'll see what happens.
And then the last one is to fully fund legislated mandated educational technology, hardware and infrastructure. So we have to test our students digitally. We have to provide that virtual experience. You know, the students are required to take a virtual class, and we have to provide space for them in our schools to do the virtual class, even though it's supposed to be virtual. So we still have to provide a computer lab for them to access their virtual class if they need that. So that's going to require a great deal of infrastructure in order to make that happen. And it's not just buying a bunch of new computers. We have to expand our bandwidth. We need routers and switchers for our network in order to make this happen. And so those are the things that we are bringing forward as we continue to have conversations with our legislators. I know Dr. Bingley is going to be meeting with Steve Crisafulli on Monday. We have a legislative lunch planned with our delegation in December as we want to move forward with that. And this is where you become involved. If you, oops, what happened? Here we go. If you agree with these things, we have a petition, and if you click Be a Change Agent, it'll take you right to the petition site. And you can go in and sign our petition. We have 458 who have already signed it. You can share it on your social networks. You can just share our link to that legislative page on your social networks. If you agree that these are things that the school system should be working with our legislature with, to make change, we need your support. Voices matter. They really do. That's who these politicians listen to. They listen to the masses. And so we need as much help and as many foot soldiers out there. Just, again, you put it on your Facebook, you share it on your Facebook, it'll be amazing the reach that we will see take place. So we're putting together a video series to explain some of these things in detail, and we're really going to take a systematic and thoughtful approach, and we're not just going to give up after one or two meetings. We're just going to keep moving on these things, and as we are successful with these things, we will add different things, because we the people need to be able to be the voice out there to make sure that our schools are strong and continue to offer the same kind of educational opportunities we've been able to provide thus far. So at this point, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have. Either myself or Dr. Bingley will answer them. Please use the mic again. We appreciate it.
Hi. Mine isn't so much a question, but some clarification. I'm probably not the only one sitting here wondering. There's a few acronyms thrown out. My first question is field test versus EOC. That's
Okay.
not the same.
Right. An EOC is an end-of-course exam.
Right.
Okay, that's required right now by it's mandated by law, so that's the test. What we're suggesting is that instead of having it immediately count against the students and the teachers, that we field test to see what's the validity, how does it impact students, before it becomes something that determines a student's retention, remediation, or a teacher's evaluation.
Okay, so it's like a pre-test,
Right.
and then you'll see about the EOCs
Kind of like a
after
pilot.
that.
I mean,
Okay.
that's what people, they usually test things out before they implement it and with such impact.
Not in Florida, but everywhere else.
Right. And then my next, just a couple of acronyms thrown out, PICO and FTE.
PICO is Public Education Capital Outlay. It existed for years and years and years and years, and then it went away. K-12 ed got none of it. It went only to charter schools. They brought a little bit back in this current budget for K-12, but it still pales in comparison to the dollars that go to charter schools. And the FTE is full-time equivalent. It's the funding that we get per student.
Okay. And does the PICO money have anything to do with, you know, was that in place and then, you know, we had the lottery and so we're going to have the lottery on top of the PICO and no, it has nothing.
It has nothing to do. The loss of PICO was one of the reasons our capital budget was in such a problematic issue. Okay. The real quick issue with the lottery, when they say it goes to public education, it does. That is absolutely truthful. Now, the challenge is what happened in Florida, which happens in a lot of states. When the lottery proceeds went in for education, a similar amount of general fund money left education and went to other things. Now that would be a break even. But here's the problem. When the lottery, in the first year of the lottery proceeds, 80% of it went to K-12 education. Currently, 40% of it goes to K-12 ed. So higher ed got a bigger take of it. K-12 ed would have been far better off if the lottery had never occurred. That's the reality. But it is honest that all those dollars do in some way go to public education.
Thank you.
So just in conclusion, anything that, if you have questions, feel free to email me, irwin.michelle@brevardschools.org. That's Irwin with an I. Or give me a call. Be happy to talk to you about it. And let us know if you want to get involved and help us out with this initiative. Okay? Thank you so much. Remember.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, we have what everyone's been waiting for. Lieutenant Scully is going to come up and talk us through KeepNTrack and volunteers and all that good stuff. As he's making his way up here, I have Vanna White, Miss Bridget Geiger, who is our art resource teacher, who is stepping in for me today for Javon Blum while she is at a conference. And I'm sorry I did that while she was eating. Real quick, look at the 4 legs of your chair. If you have a little curly ribbon on your chair, please stand up. We had some extra books left over from our Parenting in Today's World workshop that if you didn't get to come to, you missed something great. Our guest speaker, we gave out books, and I have some extras. I'd like to give those out today. All right, take it away, Lieutenant Scully.
Can I use this microphone? Okay.
I do just want to say one more time, remember, hold on to those questions. I know something's going to be said that's going to make you want to ask those questions, but just hold tight and let him get it all out, and then write them down, and then we'll do all the questions towards the end. And remember that when you do talk, you got to be at a microphone. Thanks.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? I'm not a stand behind the podium person, so I've got to get around and walk a little bit. Talk helps me think and make sure that I cover everything that we need to talk about. First of all, my name is Mike Scully. I'm from the Office of District and School Security. I've been with the district about 4.5 months, and for those of you who haven't noticed, I'm a deputy sheriff, and I am here as a result of a new partnership that was entered into between Sheriff Wayne Ivey and the superintendent, Dr. Bingley, and our current school board. The intent behind the partnership really is this: to bring law enforcement into the BPS family and allow us to really kind of manage and lead the safety and security efforts on behalf of the district. The Sheriff's Office is the largest law enforcement agency in the county, and we have tremendous resources, tremendous expertise in a lot of different areas that the district just doesn't have the ability to develop or cultivate, or it's just not economically feasible for the district to develop or cultivate those same levels of expertise or areas of expertise. So So they've asked the sheriff to come in and manage the Office of District and School Security on their behalf, and quite frankly, I'm very honored and very privileged to be part of the BPS family. So I'm here to talk a little bit about KeepNTrack, and I'm going to get to KeepNTrack in just a minute, but I want to ask a couple of questions. First of all, how many of you have children in the district? How many of you have children? How many of you have grandchildren? Okay, good. Anybody that does not have a child in one of our schools right now? Thank you for your service. Thank you. Okay, so everybody in this room has skin in the game, including myself. I have a child in one of our schools, and I can tell you that just like you, my goal every single day is to ensure that my child, your child, and every member of our staff and faculty get to school and get home from school safely every single day, without exception and without failure. I lay awake at night thinking about how are we going to do that? How can we do that? How do we make sure that your child is safe in school and at school? One of the ways that we do that is a couple of different things. First and foremost, thank you all for your support on the half-cent sales tax. That is going to make a huge difference to our schools, huge difference. In addition to all the capital improvements that will come that are very, very necessary and needed, there's a small percentage of that money that's going to be utilized to implement safety and security initiatives at every one of the schools in the district, every school in the district. If you're interested in knowing what will be coming to your school, go on our website and you can actually look and see specifically what safety and security initiatives will be coming to your school. But when we talk about security, the first thing we do when we go to a school, and I was on a school campus yesterday. I was at Holland Elementary. Anybody from Holland Elementary here today? Holland Elementary School in Satellite Beach, for those of you that are not familiar with it. I'd never been to Holland Elementary until yesterday. Had an opportunity to take a tour of the facility, and the facility is very unique in that it's very secure because all of the classrooms are contained literally within the four walls of the building. So the structural integrity of the facility is intact, and it's much easier for us to ensure the safety of Holland Elementary and schools that are built in this fashion than it is many of the other schools that we have in the district that are more of an open design. So when we talk about safety and security, our first concern is securing the perimeter of the school. And we do that two different ways. One, with fencing, because we want to secure the exterior perimeter of the school. And the goal is to reduce or minimize the opportunity for a campus intruder, for someone to be on our campus or access our buildings getting past that exterior perimeter. If we get past the outer perimeter, being the fencing, and it's actually very easy to get past the fencing. Fencing actually just keeps honorable people off campuses. The next avenue of resource for us is the inner perimeter. And those are the four walls of the school building that we have to make sure that those facilities are secure. Well, with our half-cent sales tax money that's being earmarked towards security, those are the two of the areas that we're going to be spending a significant amount of money on, and that is securing the exterior perimeter of our campuses through fencing, upgrading fences, and then ultimately implementing access control systems in our schools. For those of you that are not familiar with access control, these will be proximity card readers, and you see them in a lot of the more high-tech buildings, literally where you hold what looks like a credit card type device up to the access code reader. There's an electronic code built into that card. There's a chip, and it will open and unlock the door. That's where we're headed as a district, is to implement access control systems in our schools. It's all about one thing. It's about the safety of your child and your grandchild while they are in our custody, while they're in our care. That's our number one goal and our number one priority. One of the new initiatives that we've put in place, some of you may have heard of it. I see a lot of yellow stickers out there, and I know that you're anxious to talk about this, and that is KeepNTrack. So what is KeepNTrack? Well, again, I've been with the district about 4.5 months. When I arrived here, a member of my team came to me and said, "Hey, Mike, I'm part of an RFP team, and we're looking at a new visitor volunteer management system." Well, I didn't know what that meant, quite frankly. But I did know that the district had a program called VIPS, Volunteers in Public Schools, and I was somewhat familiar with that. So I knew generally, okay, we're doing something as it relates to visitor and volunteer management. Well, I've since learned that VIPS actually went live in Brevard Public Schools in 2003, and it was something that was developed by our staff internally. And for those of you that may be computer folks, it's based on a Unix-based it's a Unix-based program. Well, it's 2014, and most folks are looking for Windows-based or more of a graphic user interface software. So we began looking to move from our 2003 program to a program that is more relevant to today's technologies. We put a request for proposal out, basically seeking vendors who were providing this type of a product to see what they had available and would it meet our needs. Well, at the point we went out for RFP, we weren't just looking for a program like VIPS where we literally could process people in and out of our buildings. We actually wanted to do more. And one of the things that we wanted to try and do was increase the number of volunteers that we have in the district. We wanted to make the process more user-friendly and much more convenient for our parents. So what does that mean? Well, for those of you that have been around a while, under the old system we had 2 levels of volunteers. We had listed volunteers and we had registered volunteers. Some of these folks had to be fingerprinted, some of them didn't. So what we were trying to do, or one of the stated goals, was to try and get out of the business of fingerprinting volunteers. And you're probably wondering, why would you want to do that? Well, one, it's $47. It's expensive. It's expensive for our parents. And 2, it's inconvenient because we had to drag a lot of parents. A lot of you came a long way to our office here to be fingerprinted. So we began looking at the vendors to see what options did we have to process volunteers. When I say we, we're talking about Brevard Public Schools. Well, KeepNTrack was one of the vendors that we were kind of interested in. They made the final cut, and they came to us and said, we can actually provide that service for you at a greatly reduced cost. Not only that, you don't have to fingerprint your volunteers, and here's what we offer. So the RFP team began to look at the criminal background check that could be provided from KeepNTrack, which is a private corporation. And we took their product and we laid it side by side with the criminal background checks that we were getting from our FBI fingerprints. Because when you're fingerprinted, it goes through the FBI national database and it comes back to us and tells us what your criminal history is. We laid them side by side, and what we saw was amazing. They were actually very comparable. So we took about 15 or 20 different criminal background checks, and we laid them side by side, what we were getting from KeepNTrack versus what we could get from the FBI national database based on fingerprints. And quite frankly, the RFP team came back and said, it's very comparable, we think it's of the same quality, and we think this is the right thing to do because it meets the stated goals. So there was a decision made to move away from fingerprinting volunteers. On August the 11th, we went live with KeepNTrack. We were processing our new Level A volunteers through our KeepNTrack criminal background checks, and we were processing our Level B volunteers just as we normally processed our listed volunteers. Everything was going well, so we thought. About 2.5, 3 weeks into the process, we went live on the 11th, so we had the first 5 days before school kind of smoke out a few things. And we smoked out a lot. And when school started on the 18th, we began to have some issues, and we began to, find some solutions to those issues. But my staff came to me and they said, Mike, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? The background checks that we're getting from KeepNTrack are incomplete. They're not as comprehensive as we need them to be. They're inconclusive. So we began looking at the data, wondering, how did we get this during the RFP phase and get something completely different once we've signed on the bottom line? And what happened was we weren't able to get the answers we needed. We weren't able to find the solutions that we needed. So I said, stop. We're going to stop processing volunteers. And this was a Monday. My belief when I made that decision to stop processing volunteers was that by Friday, certainly within a week's time, we would have our arms wrapped around the issue and have a solution in mind so that we could move forward. 1 week morphed into 2 weeks, 2 weeks morphed into 3 weeks, and I'm getting lots of telephone calls from you guys wondering, why haven't I been processed? Quite frankly, folks, we didn't have a good answer because we still didn't know exactly what the problem was. Actually, we did know what the problem was. We weren't getting what we needed. We didn't know what the solution was. Well, ultimately, the decision was we have to go back to fingerprinting volunteers. And the reason for that is because we have an expectation, you have an expectation, our community has an expectation that we will definitively know who is in our schools, who is in our classrooms, who is on our field trips with our students. And I will tell you, there was a lot of discussion about different options. What do we do? What are all of our options? And the decision was to implement the new level A plus volunteer, which is the fully fingerprinted volunteer that we have today. So we now have 3 levels of volunteer. If you're not familiar with it, we have the level B, which is the basic volunteer. We have the level A, and we have the level A plus, which is our fully fingerprinted volunteer. I share that story with you because I wanted to make sure that you guys understand how we got here today. Because I can assure you, when we started this process on the 11th of October, when we flipped the switch and turned this thing on, nobody ever imagined that on the 7th of November that we would be having this conversation. But we are. This is about one thing. This is about the safety and security of your child, your grandchild, and it's about Brevard Public Schools knowing definitively who we are allowing in our classrooms, who we are allowing to be one-on-one with your child. That's what this is about. So I want to share with you where some of this information is, and I want to share with you some of the processes and kind of where we are today. On our website, if you're not familiar with our website, this is the BPS website. See if I can use this. At the very top of the website, there's a tab that says Parents and Volunteers. If you scroll to the very bottom, you're going to see volunteer information. Excuse me. You can click on the word volunteer information, or you can hover over it. And if you hover over it, you're going to actually get an additional drop-down box that's going to have a couple of different things. Actually, all of this is contained on this same link. So if you click on the link, it will all come up in one page. All right, the first thing that you're going to come to was this. We had to create this volunteer matrix, and I'm going to tell you why. If you didn't live it, like we did, we confused the heck out of our schools and our parents, and I will tell you there's one person responsible for that, me. When the decision was made to implement a level A plus, quite frankly, we panicked a little bit because we knew we were backed up. We have over 16,000 volunteers queued up in the system today. We had about 1,000 of those 16,000 processed when we stopped. That meant I had a lot of really ticked off parents blowing the phone lines up in my office. So I said to my staff, go, we have got to start processing volunteers. And quite frankly, folks, we didn't have the processes in place really to do what we were going to do. But we knew what we had to do and we knew where we were going. So at the same time, while we're developing the processes, we're telling people what we're doing. And of course, like any other verbal communication, it gets changed about 6 times by the time it leaves my lips to my staff, to your volunteer coordinator, to your volunteers. And everything got very convoluted very, very quickly. So we put a couple of things out trying to clarify the process, and I will tell you we failed. We failed miserably. One of which is a beautiful flow chart. It's got all sorts of arrows. Have you seen the blue flow chart? That is horrible. Who thought that was a good idea? I will tell you that actually came from my office, but it was never intended to be disseminated, but it got disseminated. So if you have the blue flow charts, please burn them, throw them in your fireplace for Christmas and burn them. I was at a school the other day, and I walked in the door, and there's the blue flow charts hanging over the KeepNTrack machine in the office. So I quickly ripped them off the wall. I thought the office clerk was gonna tackle me as I'm ripping this stuff off the wall. Anyway, the volunteer matrix there, and I know that the words are probably so small you can't see them, but all of this is on the BPS website if you want to look at it. Well, what we wanted to do
They also have it on a red flyer in front of them.
Oh, thank you. I thought that was God. I'm like, holy crap. I pissed him off too. Or her. All right. Anyway, we wanted to make it very, very simple. We wanted to put the information out where people could look at it and visually determine what level of volunteer they were or what level of volunteer they needed to be depending upon what they want to do in their school. Here's what happens. Many of our volunteers, here's a great example. I got a phone call from one of our schools last week, and they were highly irritated that they'd sent one of their parents to our office to be fingerprinted. Parent arrives in our office, and my member of my team says, "How can I help you?" "I'm here to be fingerprinted." "Okay. Yeah, I want to take my daughter to a field trip to the Brevard Zoo." Timeout. Well, if you're going on a field trip to the Brevard Zoo, you don't necessarily need to be fingerprinted, and quite frankly, we really don't want to see you spend $47 if all you want to do is go to the zoo. So we thought all this parent wanted to do was go to the zoo. Well, the rest of the story is this parent also wants to help coach the basketball team. So that changes the equation. So it's important for everybody to know if this is what you want to do, this is the level of volunteer you need to be. So now that I've thoroughly confused you, the standard really is this, and it's very simple. If you'll just keep this one thing in mind, this will answer all your questions, I hope. If you have a volunteer who's going to be one-on-one with a student, if you have a volunteer who's going to be one-on-one with a student, they must be a level A+, fully fingerprinted volunteer. One-on-one with a student, you must be fingerprinted. The reason for that is this. I know each of you have an expectation that we will know who would be with your student in the classroom. If they're going to be one-on-one with your child, I assure you, you want them fully fingerprinted, and you want someone from Brevard Public Schools to know who they are and what their criminal background consists of. That's why we've taken this position. That's why we've taken the procedures that we have. So just keep that in mind. That should answer all your questions. Now, here's the however. The asterisk. If you'll notice, there's a bunch of asterisks up there. I think I might have been a used car salesman in my past life or something. But if you have volunteers going on a field trip, if you're going to the zoo, if you're going to SeaWorld, if you're going to Epcot, wherever you're going, our preference is that your chaperones would be a level A+ volunteer. However, If you don't have enough A-plus volunteers, you can pair 2 level A volunteers together. They can work in a team as level A volunteers, and they can still chaperone that same group of students. We want to make sure that everybody understands. We want everybody that wants to go on a field trip to go on a field trip. We don't want anyone being turned away from an event or from a volunteer activity for any reason other than a background concern. Does that make sense to you? Is everybody clear on that? A+ would be our first choice, but if you don't have enough A+s, you can pair 2 level A's together to take and chaperone that same group of students. All right, so let's talk just a little bit about the A+ volunteers. What did we do? We actually did 2 things. When we turned KeepNTrack on, how many of you were fingerprinted under VIPS? How many of you were fingerprinted in the old system? Wow, a lot of you. Okay. How many of you, when we turned KeepNTrack on, your fingerprints were outside the 3-year window and had to be re-fingerprinted? Okay, good. All right, well, let me tell you what we did. Let me tell you what we're doing to fix it, and let me tell you where we're headed. When we implemented KeepNTrack, there were a couple of decisions made, and the first decision was that we were going to roll all of the VIPS volunteers that were within 3 years on their fingerprints. If they were within 3 years on the expiration date of their fingerprints, we were going to grandfather them in and roll them into KeepNTrack as a level A volunteer. That was the original plan. That's exactly what we did. My staff came to me and said, hey, Mike, what about the 3,176 volunteers who still have valid fingerprints that didn't roll into KeepNTrack? And it initiated a lot of conversation in our office, and it was, hey, that's not right. It's morally and ethically wrong. We made a commitment to these parents. If you pay your $47, drive to Vieira, get fingerprinted, you're good for 5 years. And then all of a sudden, we've changed the game. So we ultimately took that back, and the decision was, no, we're not going to do that. If people are valid on their fingerprints, if they were fully fingerprinted in VIPS, they're fully fingerprinted in KeepNTrack, roll everyone into the system. And that's exactly what we've done. So, if your fingerprints are valid within the 5-year window, if your prints are valid within the 5-year window, you are in KeepNTrack today. Hold on, I know where you're going with this. I'll answer your question in a minute. You are in KeepNTrack today as a level A+ volunteer. And if you paid $20 because you thought you were supposed to pay $20, we're going to give you your $20 back. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to do that. Now do you understand how this got so screwed up?
Lieutenant Scully, can I interrupt real quick? I'm sorry. Just if there's anybody who pre-registered and didn't get into the correct seating, if you pre-registered for your badge and you have not received your badge yet, please go stand by the door. Only if you pre-registered. Thank you.
Okay. Now, many of you are going to say, well, I've looked in the machine. I was fingerprinted in VIPS, so I should be in KeepNTrack as a level A+ volunteer, but I'm not there. You're right. You can't see it, but you're there. Folks, I cannot make this up. Trust me. Trust me. Sometimes you just can't make it up. Here's why you can't see yourself in the machine. I'm seriously thinking about taking drinking up again, I can tell you. VIPS was a completely open system. Again, it was developed by our staff here. And if you registered at Mims Elementary and you went to Palm Bay Elementary and you logged in as a volunteer, VIPS recognized you as a BPS volunteer. It didn't matter what school your students went to, didn't matter what doors you walked through. Once you were in VIPS, you were in VIPS. Well, KeepNTrack is similar, except KeepNTrack is actually siloed by school site. There's multiple databases within the KeepNTrack system. and then it's siloed by school site. So if during your registration, if you registered, you've got a kid at Jefferson Middle School, so you checked Jefferson, but you forgot about your youngest one who goes to Audubon, and you push transmit, you go check in at Jefferson, bang, you're in the system. But you go to Audubon to deliver cupcakes to little Billy's class party, and Audubon says, you're not in the system. How many of you have had that happen? Okay. Only 2. Hey, we're good. Well, you actually are in the system. The problem is Audubon can't see you because you're siloed into Jefferson's database. So what's happening is there's 83 options within the KeepNTrack system. There's only 83. So we just have to make sure we pick the right one. You are in the system. Trust me, you're in the system. But if we don't have your facility selected, you're not going to show in your facility's database. And that's what's happening. I will tell you, my staff gets hundreds of telephone calls every single day. I know Mrs. Jones is one of my volunteers, but I can't see her. She's gone. She's in the system. We just have to show it. Problem is, district security is the only ones that can see it. District security and community relations. The schools cannot see some of the databases. We're the only ones that can see it. So if you're in the system or you're supposed to be in the system and you're not showing in the system, please call our office. We are manually going through 16,000 volunteers to make sure that we have the correct facility selected. It's taking a lot of time to do that, but it's what we have to do to get it right and to make it work. Okay, how many of you want your $20 back that paid you 20 bucks? Okay, let me tell you how you're going to get your $20 back. All right, on the BPS website, this is the page here. Again, it's parents and students, volunteer information. But if you hover over volunteer information, you can see right here, applicant refund procedure. Click on it, and it's going to come up. Good news is it's only about 6 pages. All right. The folks that are eligible for the $20 refund are this. These are folks who were registered VIPS volunteers. They were fully fingerprinted, but because they weren't included in that first 3-year roll-in, many folks paid the $20 that really didn't need to pay the $20. So we want to make sure you get your money back. What you need to do is go on the website here, and we can do reimbursements one of 2 ways. One, we can cut you a check, which I wouldn't recommend because it takes like 9 years and an eternity. Or we can credit your credit card. The way we're going to credit your credit card is this. We hope that you're able to resurrect the email that you deleted like 3 months ago with the payment confirmation code. If you can resurrect that payment code, forward that payment code information to our office, district security at brevardschools.org. I'll give it to you again. And our staff, every Friday, we submit a list of folks to our payment provider, and we reimburse, your payment is reimbursed back to your credit card. So the procedure is outlined on the website. Take a look at the procedure. Just read through it. If you have any questions, please call us in our office. The phone number is at the bottom, our phone number, and our email address is at the very bottom. Scroll to the bottom here so you can see. Maybe. There it is. Okay, there's our telephone number, 633-1000, extension 233, or you can email us at districtsecurity@brevardschools.org. Again, all of this is on the BPS website, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, next thing, level A to level A plus upgrade. How many of you want to upgrade from a level A to a level A plus? All right, good. We have a procedure on our website, the level A to level A plus upgrade procedure. Explains how we're going to do that. But let me tell you how we're going to do that. We can do one of 2 things. One, we can send you back your $20. We can send you a check, which I don't recommend because it takes 9 decades and an eternity. Your kids will be graduated before you see your $20 check. Or we can apply your $20 towards the $47 fingerprint upgrade, or we'll send you $20 back to your credit card and you can pay the entire $47 on your credit card. So there's actually 3 options on the upgrade procedure. See how simple this is? Now you know why it took so long. But again, here's one thing I do want to share with you. For new volunteers, and I don't think it applies to anybody that's in this room. Let's assume you get a new volunteer. Someone moves here from, I was going to say West Africa, but that's probably the wrong answer right now. They move here from London, and they want to be a volunteer. One of the new things that we have implemented in our process is we're still trying to make this as convenient for our parents and our volunteers as we can. One of the things we can do with new volunteers, meaning you don't have any money in this, you haven't paid your $20. If you're a new volunteer or if you're a B wanting to upgrade, you can go to any of the sheriff's offices throughout the county. There's one in Titusville, there's one here in Vieira, Merritt Island, Cape Canaveral, or Melbourne, and you can actually be fingerprinted in any of the sheriff's substations. And that saves you from having to drive to our office here in Vieira. But this only applies to people who are new volunteers, folks that have not been fingerprinted and have not paid their $20. If you go to the sheriff's office, they're going to charge you $43. And the difference with that is this. It's $33 for the background check. The level 2 background check that we do costs $33. The sheriff's going to charge you $10 for a processing fee, and then you're going to be out the door for $43. So new volunteers can go to any of the sheriff's substations located throughout the county rather than drive here to Vieira. For those folks that live in the Vieira area or they just want to come to the ESF, they can come here and we're happy to provide that same service. But I will tell you our cost is $47, and where that $47 is this. Same $33 the sheriff pays. The difference is the sheriff owns his fingerprint machines. We lease our fingerprint machines. So we pay a lease fee per fingerprint to 3M, who's the company that we lease our machines from. So that's the difference in the cost is the sheriff owns his machines, we lease our machines. The beauty of our situation is we get new machines like every other year, and it doesn't cost taxpayers a penny. So it's a pretty good deal for us, but I'm sure they're making some money as well. So that's kind of the process. All of this is outlined on the website. Again, the level A to level A plus upgrade procedure is there. If you have any questions, you can call us. And again, the procedure is here on the website. And at the very bottom of the procedure, maybe, there's all the locations of the sheriff's precincts, the hours that you can get fingerprinted, the process, and then ultimately our contact information is at the very, very bottom. If you have any questions, you can call us. How am I doing on time, Diana?
You have 30 minutes.
I have 30 more minutes. Wow. Okay.
Well, 25.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. The last thing I want to share with you as far as the website is for those of you who are working in the office. At the very bottom, volunteer information is the matrix flyer. If you click on that, it comes up as a PDF. Please print this and put it near your machine. Make it available to your parents. Make this available. This is what we'd like to distribute to our parents because we think that it really clarifies in the simplest terms possible what is required to be a volunteer. We get lots and lots of calls about what does it take, what level do I need to be, people who are just confused by the process. We understand that, we get it. Again, we're trying to make sure that we have a single message going forward. And when you're dealing with information that's at 100 different locations, and that's really what we're talking about, we're talking about all 82 of the district schools, almost all of our charter schools. We're talking about trying to disseminate information at 100 different distribution points. It gets very complicated very quickly. So if you guys can help us make sure that this is posted at your school, either on the machine, near the machine, or near the office, so that volunteers, new volunteers, when they come in, they can pick it up, take it with them, and they have the same information at Sunrise Elementary School that we're disseminating at Jefferson Middle School. It's the same information, same location. Okay. Now, let me tell you just a little bit. I've told you about all of the failures that we've had with KeepNTrack. Let me tell you about the successes. And I think this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is what it really comes down to. One of the things that we gained, and this is probably one of the most substantial components of our security system that we gained when we went to KeepNTrack, was we have the ability to conduct a sex offender and a sexual predator check on every visitor and every volunteer that comes through our system. Within about the first 2.5 weeks, I wish Michelle was here, she could tell me for sure, we had about 10,000 people come through our lobbies and check in through KeepNTrack within about the first 2 weeks of school. 10,000 people, that's a lot of folks. And since then, that number has grown exponentially. But one of the things that we gained when we went live with KeepNTrack was the ability to conduct a sexual offender, sexual predator check on everybody that walks through our door and they check in. And I will tell you that we have had tremendous success simply as a result of this system being in place. We have had 6 confirmed, and probably more that I can't quantify, 6 confirmed sexual offenders or sexual predators that were trying to access our campus. These are people coming on your school with your children that were kept off of our campus as a direct result of this system. That's huge. That is huge. And I will tell you, some of these folks are parents. Some of these folks were vendors, people that the district does business with. It may be not necessarily the vendor, but it may be an employee of the vendor. Any number of people. But we require everybody to check in through KeepNTrack simply because we want to know who's on our campus, and we want to make sure that these folks are safe and that they're not a sexual predator or a sexual offender. That gain right there makes all of the rest of this conversation worthwhile. We have invested hundreds of man-hours and a lot of money to make this system work. And it's about the safety and security of our schools, our campuses. It's about the safety and security of your students, my student. We know that everyone has been frustrated, confused. Trust me, we're frustrated. Sometimes we're confused. Actually, I'm confused a lot, I think. But I can assure you, we're absolutely committed to make this system work because it's about the safety of our students. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about, and I'll answer the questions as best I can. So who wants to start? You want to start? Is there a mic? Diana, is there a mic we can pass around? Sorry.
Two questions. The first one is, you said everybody who had been fingerprinted within the 3 years was automatically an A+. But when we were getting our badges, some of us were showing up as A's. And the advice we were given was to go back to our school. And exactly what words am I supposed to tell them to give you guys the information you need? And do I need to do it in both of my children's schools?
Okay, first of all, I'm confused by that. So let me, before you leave here, let's find out why that occurred, because I'm not sure why that occurred. We should be able to look in the system and know whether, well, I can tell you why that probably didn't happen, because we don't have VIPs where we can look back in VIPs and verify your prints. Here's what's happening, and this I think will answer the question. Everybody we rolled in, everybody that we rolled from VIPs into KeepNTrack, we have to manually go back and update that status. Now, what does that mean? One, we upgrade you from a level A to a level A+, and when we do that, we input your background date, the fingerprint date, and we associate those two things together. So that 5 years from your fingerprint date if you try and check into the system, it will lock you out. It'll lock you out from an access perspective until you're re-fingerprinted. That's a manual process. We rolled, for some reason, I think the number's over 5,000 people we rolled in. So we're having to manually go back and update every single one of those folks that we rolled in from VIPS to KeepNTrack. It's been very time consuming, but we're plugging away at it. So my guess is, and this is just a guess, but I think I'm probably pretty accurate, you're probably one of those that we just haven't gotten to manually update yet. But if you will come to our office, which literally is right outside these doors, we will look you up in the system and we will do it before you leave the facility today.
There's quite a few of us, I believe.
Okay.
And so my second question is, 6 sexual predators / offenders.
Right.
How does that work? They come into the office, they flip their driver's license underneath there like the rest of us do, and it goes wah, 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 wah. I'm curious, how does that work? Or does it, a week later, go, oh yeah, no, you can't let that guy back on the campus?
Okay, here's how it works. That is a great question. Here's how it does work. The system actually queries a national sex offender sexual predator database. It live queries that database. So if I scanned into the system today, it literally sends my name and my date of birth to the server. It compares it against the sex offender sexual predator database, and it sends a response back that quick. Now, what it does, the way it works off of name search. It kind of conducts what's called a Boolean search based on name. If your name is John Smith, I am so sorry. You probably are never going to get past the front door of one of our schools. But if you've got the name, the same name as someone who is in the database, here's what's going to happen. The system is immediately going to say, John Smith. We have a John Smith in our database with a close date of birth. It may not be an exact date of birth match, but it's going to send us back. First thing it's going to do, the system's going to lock up. Nobody is checking in and nobody is checking out of KeepNTrack until we clear it. It sends a text message to me and all of my staff, and it sends an email and a text message to designated staff at that school site. We sat down with the principals at every one of our schools and we said, who do you want to receive these notifications? Generally, it's the principal, the assistant principal, probably the PE teacher, the AD, the biggest guys in the school generally. Office clerk, because the office clerk is the first avenue of resource in this. They probably deserve high hazard pay, really. But we rely very heavily on our office clerks. So we get an email, it comes that quickly, and we get a text message. I get an email and a text message, and literally my phone will go bing, bang, beep, beep, beep at the same time, and that's how I know it's a KeepNTrack. You can look at it, and it will say KeepNTrack name match at Rockledge High School. And it will tell us the name of the person trying to check in, and it will actually give us a hyperlink. I was going to see if I could show you how it works, but I'd have to log in my email. It will actually give us a hyperlink that our staff can click on, and when you click on the link, it will show you all of the information on the offender or the predator, along with a photo, so that we're able to look at that photo and say, yeah, this is not her, or yes, this is him or her. We still rely on our staff, our office clerks, our principals, our APs, the AD, whoever. We rely on them to do that discrimination work for us. They can look at that and go, this is supposed to be a Hispanic female, and this is not a Hispanic female. So we can look at a lot of these and know, yes, this is a good hit or this is a bad hit. But it's instantaneous. I mean, it happens very, very quickly. And we have a system. The system has a mechanism in place to push those notifications out immediately to a plethora of people throughout the district. Typically, as soon as we get the notification in district security, we're calling the school. They know when the phone's ringing, it's us. It's kind of like we need like a bat phone or something. But we're on the phone with them. You've got a KeepNTrack match in your lobby. We're looking at it. Is it a match, yes or no? Our staff is there to support our office clerks and our school staff to help really determine whether this person is the right person or not. But I can tell you, here's a great example. And this is the easiest one for me to tell you about. We had a KeepNTrack match at one of our schools in South Brevard. So we called, and the office clerk said, yeah, it's so-and-so from such and such an air conditioning company here. They're here to work on our air conditioners. We got a name match based on a sexual offender. Well, before the office clerk could put the phone back down, he's out the door. He is out the door. Now, what does that tell you, folks? So, of course, we click on the link. They click on the link, and she says, oh, my God, this is him. That was him. That was him. And, of course, they look out the door, and now he's in the truck, and he is headed down the road. But this is someone who could have been on one of our campuses, but was kept off of one of our campuses as a result of this system. So the effectiveness is there. We are very pleased with what we're seeing in that regard. The safety components of this are huge. So that is just one example. We know of about 6 of these that we can put our hands on and say, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And every one of those were actual matches. So does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My first question has to do with teachers who want to volunteer in their children's school. What is the current procedure for that?
Okay, I'm going to bore you with way too much information, but here's the answer to that. What we have done, we have rolled 100% of the BPS staff into KeepNTrack under a staff moniker. So they're actually in the system as staff. So if they're a Brevard Public Schools employee, they are in KeepNTrack today under the staff system. For BPS employees that want to volunteer, they can do one of 2 things. They can check in as staff. They can click on the staff check-in, and they can scan. We're in the process of moving to new barcoded ID badges. They can scan their ID badge into the KeepNTrack system, and it will log them in and log them out. And then all they have to do is contact the school volunteer coordinator, and they can check those hours and transfer those hours to the volunteer database. If they don't want to do that, the BPS employees can go online and they can register as a level B volunteer. Won't cost them a penny, and send us an email at districtsecurity@brevardschools.org and tell them, hey, I'm a BPS employee, but I want to volunteer at McNair Magnet. We'll go in, and based on their BPS background, because we have a very extensive background process for our employees, we will manually upgrade them from a level B to a level A+. We'll input their fingerprint date so that they have a 5-year expiration date, just like you, and they're off to the races, ready to go. Won't cost them a penny.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And my second question has to do, I just wanted a clarification on people who volunteer in an after-school club. So the teacher may or may not be sitting with them. They may be in a classroom or sitting at a table in the hall. Do they need to be A+ volunteers, or are A volunteers sufficient? It's kind of line in sight, maybe,
right.
Maybe not. The teacher could or could not be watching them.
Right. You know, there's lots of little situations that are unique to every one of your schools, and I'd like to tell you that there's one clear line that we can draw and say this is what we're going to do, and this is going to happen across all 82 of our schools. What we have to do is define the standard, and that's what we've done. We've defined a standard that said this: if we have a volunteer that's going to be one-on-one with a student, they have to be an A+ volunteer. If they're not going to be one-on-one with a student, if they're within line of sight, or if they're under the oversight of a BPS employee, they can be a level A volunteer. Does that answer your question?
It's still pretty gray, isn't it?
I was doing my best to do the dance there. you know, it's really situationally based. It really is situationally based. If you've got a volunteer that's going to be one-on-one with a child and they're not going to be under the direct supervision of a BPS employee, they do need to be an A+.
And one-on-one, if the group is 5 to 7 students,
Now
is
that's
that one-on-one?
well, you know, the goal is there's a lot of scenarios, and that's the problem. There's literally probably a million different scenarios that you guys could throw out here today. We're trying to find what's reasonable. We're really trying to find what is prudent and is the best interest of our students. So, you know, if you've got one parent who's with a group of students, we're really not keen on that unless they're an A+.
Right.
We're really not keen on that. But there's a lot of reasons why that may happen, and I think that's something we probably need to have additional discussion about.
And wouldn't the volunteer coordinator at the school
Correct.
knows how that
Correct.
school's going to
Correct.
handle that situation, and they will make those decisions, and then as volunteers you will just need to follow that school's policy,
Right.
knowing that they're doing what they know is best for their school while following the Brevard Public
Right.
Schools policy. She has one more.
Our principals and our assistant principals really need to be involved in that decision-making process. I don't want this really to lie, you know, at the foot of someone who's the volunteer coordinator, one of those kind of other duties as assigned type things. So those types of things, I think it's worthy of having some conversation with the principals and really kind of talking this thing through. And if we can give you some good, you know, some good input and guidance, we're happy to do that.
One more.
How can a school set up a date to have badges made for their volunteers?
Okay. For those of you who have had an opportunity to meet Patrick Coleman, who's the gentleman that's running the machine in there, Patrick has been spearheading that project for us. My recommendation is brownies, cookies, cake. He is very susceptible to bribes, but we have a schedule set up. In all seriousness, we have a schedule set up where we are going to be trying to come out to as many school sites as possible to do the volunteer badging on site. We know that you have a lot of parents and a lot of volunteers, but Patrick is managing that schedule. He's developed that schedule. We're just trying to refine it and then get some facility commitments from the school sites before we put that out there. But if you are interested in committing your school, we're very interested in talking to you. Okay. I know you had a question. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot Diana, you had the microphone.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
quick questions. Are we working on a way, because we have in this area a lot of people who have the federal badges and already have all of the intensive background checks. Are we working on a way to possibly do a transfer for the federal badges? And I signed up with another state's license, but I'm about to switch to Florida. Is there something that do I need to contact y'all because my license is changing? Or
Well, I'm going to answer those kind of as two different questions. I can tell you that if I can figure out how to make all of these different fingerprint systems actually talk to each other and communicate, I will be a billionaire. You'll be reading about me building a house next to Bill and Melinda Gates. All of these fingerprint systems, we would love to be able to honor NASA and Harris and the Patrick Air Force Base folks and on and on and on and on, because trust me, there's a lot of people in this room. Some of you probably been fingerprinted 5, 10 times over the course of your working career or your life. The problem is these fingerprints are all in disparate systems and they don't communicate with each other. And if they do communicate with each other, no one wants to accept those fingerprints as being acceptable. Now here's the way it works. The system we use it's called VECH, V-E-C-H, and it's run by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. What VECH does is it is specifically designed for a volunteer criminal background check, a level 2 background check. It conducts a check through the Florida databases, and then it conducts a check through the FBI national database. So the system we use is VECH. There are a number of different systems out there, and unfortunately they just don't communicate with each other. Right now, that's the problem. Right. Well, here's what's happening. Here's what happens, and here's why this is important. When we fingerprint someone, they go into the database as a query by Brevard Public Schools. If you've been fingerprinted by NASA, Patrick Air Force Base, or whomever, what will happen is, one of the options you have is you can pay to store those fingerprints in the database. And when you pay to store the fingerprints in the database, if you go out and get arrested for DUI, who's going to get notified? Us. NASA, Harris, whomever pays to store those fingerprints in the national database. So that's why it's disparate systems. If you get fingerprinted for NASA, if you get arrested for DUI, NASA's going to get the notification. BPS is not going to get the notification. That's the problem. So, but again, when I can figure out how to get that done, you'll be reading about me in Time Magazine. If anybody's an expert in that, please tell me. I need a partner on this project, by the way.
Quick question. When we have big events at school, we've just had 2, and you have a line out the door, 45 parents that all want to get to an event that starts at 9 o'clock, and they lined up at a good time, and we've got 2 monitors now at the school, and is there any way that we can and I would be willing to come up here and brainstorm with you all. Is there a way that we can help, check in these parents ahead of time? Say they know they're coming the night before. Can they, say check in for a 9:15 event, so that we don't, because twice, it was at the discretion of the principal. We were handwriting on yellow stickers, and it could have well been that somebody slipped. An air-conditioned guy could have well slipped in there, but but the thing is that we had familiar faces. We had parents all around watching those kids, but my point is, your wonderful system, your really hard-worked system was all for naught. So that's just something.
I would like to tell you that there's an answer for that, and there is an answer, but it's probably not really a very good answer. The answer really is this: we have that very issue at most of our schools, and we've had this conversation with most of our principals. And what we've said to the principals is this: you have a timeline, you have a time window to have these events. If these are events that are occurring during the school day, I'm assuming, okay. What we've said is, if it's after hours, don't worry about it. After hours, we're not too worried about it. But if it's during the school day, while we've got students on our campuses, we want people to be processed through the system. Unfortunately, it is time consuming. I will tell you right now, writing names on yellow stickers, you're just wasting yellow stickers and wasting ink, quite frankly. The value of the system is to be able to run those names through the system and verify that they're not a sexual offender, not a sexual predator. And in addition to that, it gives us the ability to know who's been on our campus and generally how long, what the destination was, those types of things. So there's not a good solution for that other than good judgment. We've asked our principals, we've said to our principals, look, we know that this is an issue. It's something that you have to manage locally. This is a brand new system for us. We've been having these kinds of events on our campuses for 50 years. So while we want to maintain the integrity of the system, there may be very valid reasons why we're not going to use the system for that particular event, that particular day. But those types of decisions, we've said to the principals, you are empowered to make that decision based on the situation that you have at your school.
I think what we tried to do, and I'm just going to share, I think what our volunteers tried to do is they would have people write names and our volunteers are great because they do it regularly, so they know people well enough, and they had the people write their names where they knew who it was, and people that they didn't know, they would say, hey, can you just go in and sign over there? And it was one of those things that we were trying to do it. And
trying to do the right thing, there's not a good system in place to do that. No, I get it.
So I just wanted to ask if there is a way that we can sign in ahead. But
I will tell you, a lot of folks said, oh, your face looks familiar. Well, my face is familiar because you've seen it hanging on the wall at the post office. Probably you've seen my fingerprints. They're hanging there too. What other questions do you have?
I have just one
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
I have been fingerprinted through the Sheriff's Office Department for different children's programs. but not for the Brevard County schools. Now, is that the same system? Or
It is the same machine, but it's not the same system. What we've had to say to the sheriff, we went to the sheriff and we said, look, here's what we want to do. We want to make it as convenient as possible for our parents. We don't want to have to drag people to Vieira, although it's a great excuse to go to dinner or go shopping or whatever. It's inconvenient to drive down here. I get it. Trust me. So what we tried to say is, look, can you fingerprint folks using our number? We have a registration number. It's called a CRI number. And when they input our CRI number into the sheriff's machines, what happens is the background check information comes back directly to Brevard Public Schools rather than coming back to the sheriff. So it's the same machine, but it's a disparate system, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay.
I know I'm probably running short on time.
This is not what everyone's going to want to hear, I know. But we do, to some degree, have to honor our timeline and Dr. Bingley's time and allow Dr. Bingley to speak. But what I will say is that I will not leave today. I will not leave today until you have all your questions answered. So I know not everybody can stay after our time, but for those who can, we will stay and we will keep hashing through it and we will talk. A lot of your questions I think might be semi-individual and need to be taken care of over in district security. So keep that in mind. But we will come back to this, okay? I promise. So don't be too angry with me here. So I'm sorry, Dr. Bingley, that wasn't the best lead-in ever, but we are excited to have you here and what you have to say. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, don't go anywhere, Lieutenant Scully, because as far as the building, because if I get done early, they can have another whack at you. You are armed, and I am not. I will indeed start off as Michelle Irwin earlier this morning suggested, and I do want to say thank you for the work and that you did and the information sharing that you did. Tuesday was a very historic day for Brevard Public Schools and a very important day. When we had Melanie Holt on Channel 9 tearing up the cut list, that was a great graphic image because that's really what it came down to. I mean, we have a list of very critical, non-optional projects that will be done. We'll be dealing with that list one way or the other. The real question was, would we be dealing with the second list, or would we be tearing it up like Melanie Holt did? And I'm more than happy to tear it up, stomp on it, and everything else. So I really am thankful for the informational work that everybody did. Just share a little information as we kind of debrief about it. We carried, there are 173 precincts, and admittedly, I was looking at this through the haze of fatigue. But we lost 11 precincts of 173. 5 of those 11 had less than 100 voters. 2 of them had less than 10. We lost 1 precinct 2-1. But that's the way it is. I mean, there are some that don't have any people vote. And so the good news there was that really did kind of tell us that there was broad information. We worked very, very hard to go from Mims to Palm Bay and speak to anybody that would listen to us about the information that you needed to have. If we could then turn it over and say, we will live with the will of the people as long as we feel the people understand what's at stake on either side of the question. So the fact that we were that broadly effective was a very good thing. Secondly, in looking at it, we carried every major retirement community. You know, our senior citizens get really more a bad rap than they deserve. I will tell you what they do their homework and they vote. And so we were there in all of them, providing them with that information, and in a couple cases we carried them in a pretty big fashion. So that's really positive. So, and now Michelle's right. Got a couple days to back away from it. At 1 o'clock, I'm a celebrity judge for some the bunch of the chefs in our senior living facilities are having a cook-off, and so I'm a celebrity judge at 1. I look forward to that. But then on Monday, I am going to talk with Steve Crisafulli, and we're back at, you know, the other issues, some of them that Michelle talked about. So let me share with you some a little more in-depth discussion about that asking Florida legislature to have a sensible accountability and assessment system that serves the needs of our kids, our schools, and let me talk a little bit about that, because when I talk to Steve, I'm going to tell him, first of all, what's not the problem. And I think last time I was here, I shared with you, I believe, didn't I, that, you know, maybe the good old days weren't always all that good. Did I share that? And that's true. So what's not the problem? It's not really a problem that we have state standards. It's not. I mean, we have to have standards of what we believe kids should know and be able to do. And in fact, you know, if the state puts half their budget into public education, I got to say they have every right to say there's some things that we want to make sure our kids know and are able to do out of this. And the assessment of those standards really is not the problem either. I think it's okay that the states say, you know, let's find a way to inform us and inform our citizens whether, you know, the kids seem to be successful. VAM, value-added measure, that's not really the problem either. In fact, as a general tool, it's probably the best thing that I've seen in my years of public education. Look, I've been on the side of I've been in a school that people were working like champions for enormously disadvantaged children. And they were being told that they're not as good as that school over there that didn't have one iota of the challenge. That's just insane. And so the formula itself really does a pretty good job of leveling that field statistically. I think I've shared with you every year we've had value added, a Title I school has been our highest performing value added measure school, because it really does compare kids that are like other kids in the state and where they started, and it really is a much more fair way of trying to answer that question, you know, how much value is being added, if you will. So that really isn't the problem. And just generally accountability. We are better than we were 2 decades ago. Folks, I was there. You know, I can say that. We are better than we were 2 decades ago. So then, what is the problem? Let me read to you what I read to our legislative delegation a little over a year ago. See, every winter I go across the way where the delegation listens to people from the community. And I always get invited, and I'm going to go over there and let fly. Now, as a preface to this, I will tell you that I was one of 5 superintendents that the Superintendents Association brought together to write a position paper to send to the Florida legislature about accountability and about teacher evaluation and how we're using and misusing you know, our current approach. So this is what I read to our delegation a little over a year ago today. You have legislated that by 2014-15, half of a teacher's evaluation and corresponding pay for performance must be based on student test results. When you heard that the value-added FCAT score could only be directly applied to about 1/3 of our teachers, you legislated that teachers can only be evaluated based on the measured performance of the students they teach. Well, it's the right idea. The problem is that there are no valid and reliable assessments on which to base these property interest decisions. While we have repeatedly changed commissioners, you know, initially I said, I had written down, while we change commissioners roughly on the same timetable as you change your car air filter, but I thought, I don't want to be too provocative, so while we've repeatedly changed commissioners, school districts have been left out there creating assessment practices and instruments, all different and none validated to have the same value-added methodology that will be applied to the state test. In fact, as I stand here today, we don't even know what the state test will be next year, and that was true when I spoke then. We've got a mess on the near horizon that will make the school grades debacle look minor. You will soon be receiving a proposal from the Florida Association of District School Superintendents that recommends timetables and actions designed to continue the positive work that has been done in teacher evaluation while requiring the Department of Education to work with multiple stakeholders to create the assessments and student growth measure methodology needed to deliver a reasonably equitable system of accountability. When you receive this proposal, ask leadership to ask the Department of Ed. Superintendents say our current legislated requirements and deadlines are untenable. We have a legal and a public perception mess right around the corner. Are they right? If they say no, make sure they understand that they own the outcome. Let's have accountability start there. Superintendents don't want to avoid accountability or quality teacher evaluation. Our concern is that for a lack of a realistic and strategic approach, we will waste the significant and positive work that has been done in both. Now, when I go back to Steve and our delegation, I look like Nostradamus, or at least his cousin, because that mess is coming, isn't it? It's already here, and it's going to grow into a crescendo. And so what you have to do with legislators then, however, is say, okay, but if not what we have, what should it be? Okay? And this is what I plan to tell him. So in other words, if all those things I mentioned are not the problem, what really is the problem? I just defined it for you. They tried to legislate something and didn't kind of think through all the unintended consequences of it. And so I am going to tell them that, first of all, what we've already told them, 50% of a teacher's evaluation based on one, I don't even care how good the test is ridiculous. Nobody really who researches and has a desire to better our approaches at evaluation thinks that's right. You just can't find anybody who thinks that's right. You have mandated by this an incredible explosion of testing. I mean, you just have. When you have to have that second grade teacher evaluated by the results of the children they teach and the content they teach, several contents, you have a massive increase in testing by design. And you have a massive number of tests that those second graders take and the other. And you have vastly different and potentially legally indefensible validity and reliability issues. So here is going to be our recommendation. first of all, we do have a locally controlled 50% of a teacher's evaluation is based on the regular kind of professional practices stuff, right? Observation, growth planning. In our case, we have some collaborative team stuff. That will stay the same. You know what? Put 20%, for instance, on of a teacher's evaluation on the state test. But let us go ahead and do what we've already done. In the previous years, we had a direct VAM, an indirect VAM, and a school-wide average VAM, which meant if you taught kids directly math and reading or whatever, then you got the VAM score from your kids. If you taught students but you didn't teach reading or math, you got the VAM results from reading and math for your students. If you had a guidance counselor, librarian, things like that, you took the school-wide average. Now, why do we say that we would just soon see that? First of all, reduce it way down to a much smaller number. But I will tell you that our value-added measure in Brevard has gone up every year. Some of the things that we've done, our evaluation results for our teachers have gone up every year. Part of it is because we give them a system that we think, it isn't guesswork. There are rubrics, there are ways that we think you can pursue excellence, go get it, and we just hope that that shows up in higher achievement for kids. And it has so far. As teacher evaluation has gone up, value-added measure scores for kids have gone up. That's a good thing. And in fact, if you look at the data, we've got 2 very good years in the can, and we used 3-year average for our teacher results because that really reduces measurement error. Our folks really have very little to fear from our value-added measure because our kids have done so well. And they're going to do well again. So whether you take the school-wide average, the average for your kids, generally, our teachers have benefited from value-added measures. They really have. It's why our results are so much effective and highly effective, because our student results are not harming teachers. Because they're good. You know, that's the way it's supposed to be. Okay. And then leave the other 30% for locally controlled. Let's bring local control and professional judgment back into this picture. I'm going to tell Steve Crisafulli, Representative Crisafulli, I'd like to say on a first-name basis. Well, we're kind of on a first-name basis. We are. The toothpaste is out of the tube. I'm going to tell you. You can give us back local control. You really can. And I promise you, we ain't never going back to the notion that we will judge the effectiveness of our schools by the number of library books. Those days are dead and gone, and really they're not supported by either side of the aisle. Everybody does want a reasonable and thoughtful way to say, hey, let's look at how we help kids. You can give us local control. Let me share with you what Brevard did with that local control, okay? When we had local control over a portion of the student assessment results, here's what we had. We had project teams of teacher leaders, principals, and they said, we're really much better in our school improvement planning. We're focusing things here at this school. Why can't some of the outcomes from our school improvement plan be in the evaluation? We think they should be, so we put it in there. We have collaborative teams in our schools, and they all kind of support bottom quartile kids, kids who have struggled. Guess what's happened in every year since we did that? Bottom quartile learning gains have gone up. We were below the state average in that. Now we're well above it. We also gave latitude for teachers who have their own students, their own individual growth efforts, their own student data said, if I'm a chorus teacher, here's what I want to try to have happen. If I'm a second grade teacher, here's what, and we scored, have points for them based on their professional work with their own kids. Now, I just told you, in all of those things, our value added has gone up. Our teacher evaluations have gone up. We've got tremendous results, industry certification, ACT. Guess what? I have a great example of a teacher, 11th grade teacher. She was focusing on ACT for her kids in science. Huge gains, right? Because we gave her a latitude to say, that's what I'm going to do. We no longer can do any of those things because of what's been legislated. Examples where Brevard was thoughtful about things that connected to teachers and kids, and you have legislated that we can't do it anymore. We got to put 50% all in this one test that nobody's even seen. Now, what legislators often will tell me is, Brian, but everybody's not like Brevard, you know. And I said, well, they may not be. So take them to task. Don't punish the citizens and the kids and the teachers here in Brevard because other folks may not be as I'll give you an example. I won't even name the county. I feel like it. But there was, and I'll just say it was their union president, gleeful that they have growth plans for teachers that nobody reads, they all get the points, and nobody determines whether they're even implemented or not. And this individual was giddy that they had that. That's an indictment, right? We shouldn't do that. That's an indictment on, that's the reason we have some of this accountability, because that's how we did. Take those people to task. Don't make Brevard pay for that. That's the message that I'm going to try to bring. And give us back some local control that we can make some sense of this thing and make good professional judgments that are meant to help teachers and children. Because this is not doing it, and you're going to have a big mess if you don't make some changes real quickly. So you can help us with that in that survey, because when I can in the new year say, by the way, we put that survey out and now there's 10,000 people that have signed it in Brevard, that brings some weight. Okay? So I just wanted to clarify a little bit more about what we believe we should be talking about. I think you don't gain by just saying, throw out accountability, because that really isn't supported. Be thoughtful. And that's what we're going to try to do. So I can take questions for 4 minutes. I started 10 minutes late, didn't I? Or 5, I think. Questions? Really? Go ahead. Come on to the mic. Oh, by the way, while you're doing that, I'm going to tell Mr. Representative Crisafulli that if we do this, what I think you have the opportunity is to bring these associations, unions, communities together. The very people who are getting out the pitchforks and the torches, we can bring them together, and Steve, you can say we listened to the citizens in this community, in this state, and really brought back some rational thought to this thing. Go ahead.
Just real quick on the petition, how can we promote that? Can that be promoted through our school websites?
Yeah, I think Michelle is going to really crank that up following our next board meeting and everything else. So yeah, we'll be throwing out a lot. Because I know with the half-cents, it was sticky on how you could promote it. So I was just wondering if this could be. This is less sticky. Okay. A lot less sticky. Okay. We can say sign this and everything else. Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure everyone was invited on November 19th at Manatee Elementary. Karen Henderson will be speaking more about this. So if you have any friends that aren't here and weren't able to hear you speak, you could come and hear Karen Henderson is giving more information. It's from 5 to 6 p.m. on November 19th, Wednesday.
She is. And she's also doing some videotapes. Actually was doing one today, I think, that really this will be out there for a lot of people to help them understand what is a really two-question legislative platform that, above all else, says, come on, this one you should be able to deal with. Give back some good local control. The very people who rail when Washington, D.C. takes away, you know, our decision-making, I just gave you examples where we had some thoughtful things that seem to help our kids, and we can't do them now because you have legislated something with a very broad brush. I guess I've hit that point a few times, haven't I? Thank you, by the way. I want to hit that point again. So,
Is it too late for this year? You're going to go talk to him on Monday, so are you trying to make change for this year?
This session, absolutely.
Okay, so it's not too late for this year. These tests and all this can
Well, the
change
tests
this
are coming this year, but it doesn't mean they can't, in the upcoming upcoming session, make some decisions that affect us going forward from those results.
Okay, so this year's a done deal.
It is.
We're going to have the test.
Oh yeah, the test is coming, and that's not really the problem. The problem is the decisions we're making from them.
From the test,
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to affect this petition, and everything else we're doing now is going to
The
affect
upcoming
future
legislative
years.
session, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you for being here and engaged in what goes on in our schools and in helping our schools and our kids. So let me go judge some chefing.
Okay, what we're going to do is we are officially ending our meeting. Thank everyone for coming. But for those of you that still have those questions and still want some clarification, we're going to give everyone a minute to clear out. If you have conversations, please take them into the hall so those staying can hear the rest of the information. Thank you guys for coming.